Everyone, we're going to get started. Thanks again for joining, and welcome to our next Competitive Advantage Talk presented by Ticketmaster. My name is JB Kalin, and I'm a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan, and it's my pleasure to introduce our presentation, Performance Optimization Strategies That Helped Win a Championship, brought to you by Fusion Sports. Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Glenn Stewart, High Performance Manager from West Coast Eagles.
Thank you very much. Sound. You need to fix that. I'm not sure about the sound, but thank you to the organisers of the Sloan Conference for having us here. It's a long way from Perth, Western Australia. I also need to thank Fusion Sport, whose platform Stratagies we use at the West Coast Eagles quite extensively. We've had a long partnership with Stratagies, and it's been terrific in helping us do some of the things that we need to do in our footy club. I'm delighted to be here back in New England. Many years ago, I was fortunate enough to coach field at Phillips Exeter Academy in Exeter, New Hampshire, an hour north from here, and it was a terrific experience. And in the fall, I had the opportunity to work with their football team, and I took the running backs and the wide receivers, and that enabled me to develop a great passion for American football. So what I thought I'd put together as an introduction is a little series called the Immaculate series, and it's 3 little clips. The first of those shows the Immaculate reception, and those that follow American football would well know that in the 1972 American Conference Football Championship, Franco Harris took a catch off a rebound off another player, took it off his bootstraps and scored the winning touchdown with 5 seconds to go, the Immaculate reception. So I thought I might just start with that.
Trying to get away, and his pass is broken up by Tatum. Tipped off. Franco Harris has it, and he's over. What? Franco Harris grabbed the ball on a deflection. 5 seconds to go. He grabbed it with 5 seconds to go and scored.
So that leads us into the next one, which is our team. The West Coast Eagles, and in the 2018 Grand Final, we trailed for the entire game except for the last 2.5 minutes. And one of our players took an intercept mark with that amount of time to go, and we had a 4-possession chain that we retained the ball and scored a goal that put us ahead, and we managed to win that particular Grand Final. Immaculate chain. So I'm going to show you the Immaculate chain, and immediately after that, little vignette called the Immaculate reaction.
Elliott provided the contest. Talor provides the run. Kicks inside 50. McGovern, what a player.
What a mark, Bruce, what a mark, and he goes to Vardy straight away. They need to keep going quickly. 2:29 remaining. Ryan with a big mark. What about that? He plays on. Ball to Sheed's too long. Maynard can't get there. Sheed, did he play on? Did he take a step? Massive. Sheed from the boundary. Needs to be inch perfect. He is. He's got the most impossible goal. Unbelievable.
It just goes to show you that no matter when the data is staring you right in the face, you're entitled to have an adverse opinion of it. So that's a little bit of Australian rules footy. So the aim of my presentation in the next 15-20 minutes is to go through 3 or 4 guiding principles that we use in the high performance department to make wonderful decisions with our data and the way that we use it. And then I want to reflect on the 4 things that we did that we thought helped prepare or assisted in preparing our players for that particular grand final, and also to give you some of the reasons why we might have gone down that path. And in fact, some of the things that I'm about to show now, Darcy Norman commented on in the previous presentation. To give you context, this is our high performance unit at the West Coast Eagles. So I'm the high performance manager. We have 3 branches to the high performance unit. We have the medical side, we have strength and conditioning, and we have sports science. And then the sports science has a research arm, and we always have a PhD student or an honours student working on a subject that we have. All of our staff here are full-time, bar the doctors. We have 2 part-time doctors, our nutritionist is part-time, and our trainers who do the strapping, massage, etc., they're also part-time. So it's quite a big unit, and we work with our coaches as part of the West Coast Eagles Footy Club. So the 4 principles that I really want to allude to today, the first of those is levels of perspective. It comes from the work of Daniel Kim in the late 1990s. And again, it reflects a little bit about what Darcy was talking about. We have a very clear vision at our club, what it is that we're trying to strive towards. We have clear mental models. And the thing that I like about it is we put in place systems and structures to deal with the events that occur on a daily basis in sport. The events that often happen is 1 hamstring, 1 ACL, a bad game when you travel away, a game where the players kick very poorly. There are the events. And we try not to worry about it because we want to make our decisions all the time that relate to our vision. If we have a number of events that occur, a number of hamstrings, then our systems and structures are not working, and so we will address those. So that's one of the key principles that we operate on. The second was the title of the presentation, the Hedgehog Principle. And I'm sure a large number of you here would have read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins. Jim Collins looked at over 1,400 companies and tried to isolate those that had made, the really large leap from good to great. And he found 11 companies that out of those 1,400 that always made a profit. They always bought their products out on time. They had great customer service. And then he tried to ascertain what were the commonalities amongst those 11 companies. And one of the things he found amongst the CEOs was the hedgehog principle. And if you're not familiar with the hedgehog principle, it's an old fable where a hedgehog is walking down the road and it's being stalked by a fox. And the fox has many talents. It's got great vision, great smell, great hearing, it's really fast, it's got good aerobic capacity, it's cunning, it's got guile, it's got great spring. And it goes to attack the hedgehog, and the hedgehog stops in the middle of the road and curls up into a ball, and the fox can't get to it. So the fox goes away, comes back with another cunning plan, and the hedgehog just curls up into a ball. And the fox persists with this for a number of days, and eventually the fox gives up and leaves. And the moral to the story is just do one thing, 1 or 2 things really well, and be very, very good at it. And that's one of the underlying principles that seep through our high performance department. The third is start with why. And again, many of you would have seen the TED talk by Simon Sinek, and he looks at great companies as well and says that the greatest of companies have a real purpose, a real reason why they do something. So every time we try and make a change, every time we plan something, we always try and be very clear on our mental models. Why are we doing this? And in fact, we document it. So when it comes time to reflect and review, we know why we travelled 2 days out from a game or 1 day from a game. Why we do this. We keep really good records of why we do things. And the fourth thing, which is really the topic today, is big rocks. And the thing is that happens in sport, we're so distracted all the time by the little 1%ers that affect us in strength and conditioning, in sports science, what the other club does up the road, and we forget about putting the big rocks in place. And the big rocks are far more critical than the little 1%ers that we all try and seep out. So what we try and do is make sure we have the big rocks in place first, and then we sprinkle the sand around if we need any 1%ers. The example of the 4 big rocks I'll talk about later, but here are some of the things that are the 1%ers, and the one that I use a lot, which Australian Rules football clubs did, was we often used to go to altitude training, and so they'd spend $200,000, $300,000 taking their teams from Australia to Arizona, and they go and live at altitude to try to get a 2% marginal gain in aerobic capacity. Yet they come back and kick with about 50% kicking effectiveness. And I'd rather spend the $400,000 getting 2 good kicking coaches, because that's the big rock, not the small marginal gain that's necessary by taking them to altitude. So it's very important to identify the things that make a huge difference in what you're doing. So our first big rock, unbelievably, was to have a strategic plan. And I know that sounds a bit odd, but when I contacted a large number of my colleagues locally, nationally and internationally, very few strength and conditioning departments, high performance departments had a strategic plan for their area. They might do for the club, but not necessarily their particular area. So we set about and had a very precise strategic plan that we wanted in high performance, and this is where our data came into being. Our strategic plan follows the VMOS model: vision, mission, objectives, strategies and tactics. And we have a clear vision of what we're trying to achieve. We have our mission, we have our objectives, and then we have key results for every one of our objectives. And the way that we achieve those key results is through our strategies and tactics. The great thing about this is it actually aligns all your staff, and they all see that they're playing a particularly important role in the outcome of a championship. And this is a great competitive advantage, that the guy down the line sees that he has a very important job to do, and he has key results that he's trying to achieve. This is just the example of a couple of our objectives. So one of them, for instance, is to minimise games and training loss to injury. A key result, as an example, is we don't want any more than 15% recurrent injuries. So any injuries that we have, we try and make sure that they're less than 15% are a direct result of a previous injury. So we have strategies in place to ensure that objective is met, that key result is met, and then we have tactics that enable us to do that. So that's our first big rock. Everyone in the football department, in the high performance unit, is part of our strategic plan. Our second big rock is making sure our best players play. Now, there's a lot of research at the moment that will allude to the fact that performance relates to the number of injuries you have in your entire squad. Our data doesn't suggest that. Our data firmly places us on the need to have our best players play. So our objective is to have 9 or more of our top 10 players playing each week. And this particular graph here will show our winning percentage. So when we have 10 of our top 10 players playing, we win 80% of our games, 4 out of 5 games. When we have 9 of our top 10 players playing, we win 2/3 of our games. So we really need our best players out there. And so we focus on strategies that ensure that our top 10 players play each week. Now you might go, well, that's pretty easy to do, but in fact this next graph shows you it's actually pretty hard to do. The red lines here are the AFL average for the number of top 10 players that can be delivered, or the top players that can be delivered each week. So 10 out of 10 available players across the whole Australian rules football competition, which is 18 teams, only occurs 15% of the time. Only 15% of the time can a club put out 10 of its best players. Only 25% of the time, approximately, can a club put out 9 of its best 10 players. The blue bar graph is our performance last year, and you can see we exceeded the AFL average, which was a very critical part of what we wanted to do. This next little piece of data shows the development of a player across his career. These points come from Champion Data, which is our official statistics provider in the Australian rules footy. And what they do is they look at the skill acts on the field and they weight them and give them points, and then they throw it into an algorithm and have a score for the player. And in fact, a lot of the data is used in fantasy football games in Australia. So this shows a player's development across his career. The higher number of points, the better performed he is. The steeper the line, the quicker his development, the higher the line, the better the player. This is a key defender, a first round draft pick. This is our equivalent player coming up now, and you can see the blue bar graphs exceed the AFL average for a first round draft pick. This is why we want these players to play. This particular player, first round, key defender, is much better than the first round picks across the board. So we need these guys out there performing. So our second big rock is have your best players playing. This is how we went. We averaged about 8.7 out of 10 players across the season. Of the 25 games we played, on 15 occasions we had 9 or more of our top players. Unfortunately, we lost one player through an ACL 2/3 of the way through the season, a top 10 player, and then we lost a second top 10 player 3/4 of the way through the season who was suspended for the last part of the season, and in fact he's suspended for the first 3 games of this year. So at the finish we only had 8 of our top 10 players to choose from. And when we went into that particular grand final, we'd lost another player in the week before, so we only had 7 in the grand final. But there's an exception to every rule. The Oppo only had 6. So if you can't get the best players out, just make sure you have more better players than the Oppo. Our third big rock is chronic load. And chronic load for us is a rolling 4-week average of the work that we've done. And this is a graph taken from our GPS showing distance. So in a week's, the blue bar graphs show the amount of running done in a week. And AFL is a big running game, and so you can see in the second bar there, they're up to 30 kilometres running in a week, plus they get belted 10 times in tackles, they're laying tackles, so it's a pretty tough game. The light blue bar graphs are our predicted loads for the first 5 rounds of the year, and the black line is our chronic load, the rolling 4-week average. So what we need is high chronic load. We need that load to be so high that when the players play in round 1, the first light blue graph, that they're prepared for that game. And the spike in load that comes when you play games is not excessive. It's better seen in this next slide. This is training leading into Christmas, during the Christmas break, and then out of Christmas. Again, the dark blue bar graphs are the load for each week. The light blue graph is our predicted load for that particular week. The black line is our rolling 4-week average, our chronic load. And just to expand on the graph a little bit, the green shaded area is what we call the sweet spot. We want our loads to be in that particular area because we think that provides a safety barrier for injury risk. The pink area is 2 times the risk, and the darker red area is 3 to 5 times the risk. So you can see that one of those graphs is a pretty big week, and there's a bit of risk involved. But the important thing about chronic load, and the thing that we really focus on, is if they have a 2-week Christmas break and they don't do anything, which is mandated by our players' union, you can see the enormous effect it has on chronic load. And when they come back after Christmas, after that 2-week break, that same training session that we saw here, it actually takes them into extremely high risk. So therefore, we have to minimise our training to ensure that we keep the risk low. And that's not one of our objectives. One of our objectives is to maximise training. So we really need to educate our players that they must train in their off periods. And otherwise, we will get this really significant drop of chronic load, and that affects everything thereafter. Our fourth big rock is hard running. Hard running for us, a midfielder might run 15, 16 kilometres in a game. That entitles walking, jogging and everything. But hard running for us is high intensity running. And what we've discovered is that we're pretty fit, our team's pretty fit, but being fit doesn't necessarily mean that you're conditioned. So what we thought we'd do this year is have a look at what was the hardest running block of 15 minutes in the last 5 years of football for our team. The hardest 15 minutes. And this is a rolling 5-minute average of distance per minute. So the first bar is the average intensity in metres per minute for the first 5 minutes of the game. The second bar is from minutes 2 to 6. The third bar is from minutes 3 to 7. And you can see for this particular player, in that second lot, he's running 180 metres a minute, It's a phenomenal amount of work that this midfielder does. And that's the running that he does over the first 15 minutes of the game. It's phenomenal. So we decided, in collaboration with our coaches, that we would try and design drills that not only mimicked the hardest running that they'd ever been exposed to, but exceeded that, and we would train it. We would try and train. And that took a lot of collaboration with the coaches to create drills that go for 15 minutes at massively high intensity on a field that's 170 metres long by 130 metres wide. You can't do small-sided games because the boys kick the footy 60 metres. So we've got to be very clever in the way that we do drills. This is a sample of one drill, and we're nearly able to mimic the hardest running for this particular player in this particular drill. It exceeded it. So not only did we know our players were conditioned for the 2018 season, it also has a massive belief effect. And to go into games knowing that whatever the game throws up, you've already been exposed to it at training, has an enormous psychological effect with the players. How did we go with it? Well, the green bar graphs here is a count of the number of times we were able to do drills on the horizontal axis for that duration. So if I just go to the far right here, on 4 occasions we were able to get drills that lasted 12 minutes or more of the hardest running exposed in a game. 8 minutes, 8 times we did 8, did it for 9 to 12 minutes, 8 times we did it for 6 to 9 minutes, and the other graphs are from the other years. So there's our 4 big rocks, and really the key message is we wanted to align our high performance staff, we wanted to align them with the coaches, so we were all on the same bus heading in the same direction. By having a strategic plan with objectives and key results, everyone had great clarity about what they were doing, and that produced enormous focus. We always put the big rocks before the 1%ers. Don't worry about what the club is doing up the road. Don't worry about one research paper. Just concentrate on the things that really matter, the hedgehog principle, and then make everything as simple as possible. We have to deal with players, we have to deal with coaches, and so we can't blindside them with enormous data. We need to make it simple, but not simpler. So thank you. I'd like to thank these guys who are our sports scientists, and Tyler King to help put the presentation together, and also to Fusion Sport. They've been a wonderful partner, and a lot of the work that we've just seen there has come from their dashboard. So to conclude, this is our players, post-game, friends, family and flags. Why we play football.
It's all about actions, boys. Not about words, it's about actions. That's what we want to do.
Thank you very much. Yep, I believe I've got a couple of minutes. Any questions?
Yeah, in endurance sport, there are a lot of modeling that is done, such as cycling or running, for the performance of the athletes in pushing beyond what you should.
Yep.
Is there an interest, or you see that as the 1% in team sport?
Using cycling?
No, using the performance modeling that is used in cycling to model better the training and the performance evolution of the athlete throughout the exposure to chronic load and hard running.
It's very difficult to model our game. The game is so chaotic and so random. The fields are not standard. The conditions are always different. We have a sense of what a theme might be for a game, and we will model to a little extent in training, but it's a very complex game to have a broad model that applies that we would think is generic. Yep.
So a lot of your presentation focused on kind of how do we maximize their physical capabilities, like how are we protecting them from injuries, how are we optimizing their training performance physically. Do you have anything that goes in that direction with the mental aspects of the game, right? That's an important part of the game as well, right? You want to make sure you're optimizing that as well. Is there any, I know that's a lot harder to model and kind of get good data on,
The biggest marginal gain in Australian rules football, and I think it probably applies to a lot of field-based sports, is on the mental side of the game. Very few clubs have full-time performance psychologists. We have a part-time one, and we have a process that we follow it's a bit like Eagle Tough, is to make our guys well aware of the mental game. And one of the things we added this year, one of the big rocks that I haven't shown, is we've done a lot of work on mindfulness. And before we start a meeting, the boys go into a room and they have a 2 or 3 minute period where we run some tapes and they allow them to be mindful for that moment, and then they go into the team meeting. And our coaches have now just started doing the same thing. So it's an area we're well aware of, and I think it's the big area that in footy, in sport, that great gains can be made.
You guys come back from Christmas, and it's clear that they didn't work out for that 2-week period. Do you give them a slow roll back into training, or
Yep.
is it kind of,
Yep. So through our Smarter-based platform, the boys come back and they load in everything that they've done in the 2 weeks. So we give them a program and they load in what they've done. And then we crunch those numbers, and if you saw the weekly load for the team, there might be 6 players who don't do that load because their chronic load has dropped significantly. So we have to manage that group of players. So those bars were the team loads, but yeah, absolutely. We've got to be really mindful ourselves on what they're doing. Yep. Yep. Yes, you. We have unbelievably good data, really clean data across a long period of time, and we will always marginally increase our data for a group across the years. And as a result, the load that they're doing is increasing. The sweet spot will always stay the same distance for the load, but they're actually doing more work. Yep.
That's all the time we have. Thanks so much, Glenn.
Thank you.